I want to welcome everybody to our next panel here at the Digital Growth Summit titled Blogging and Content Marketing Case Studies. So excited to have some of these awesome people here today. Just like all the other times, we're going to have them introduce themselves. Tell us what your name is, where you work, and what you do if you can.
Okay, my name is DeMuro. I'm the tech reporter here at KTLA Television, Channel 5 in the mornings, and nationally syndicated on about 30 TV stations where our segment goes out every day.
Hi, my name is Sebastien Tobler. I'm Director of Integrated Marketing for SBE Hotels, and I oversee all of our digital initiatives for SLS, the Medbury, Raleigh hotels, and soon SLS Las Vegas as well.
Hey, I'm Andy Hermann. I'm the contributing editor for LA Weekly. I mostly work on music content in our West Coast Sound blog. I also am a content consultant for Disney. I do my own music blog called Weirdest Band in the World, and various other freelance stuff.
Hi, I'm Suzanne. I am currently at SapientNitro. I am a content strategist and content marketer. SapientNitro, to those who aren't familiar, is a global digital ad agency, and we cater to some of the largest brands in the world. MGM is one of them, and Intel is another one. Currently working on an MGM project, and I'm also involved in content marketing for small businesses as well on the side, mostly in the B2B arena.
So we had these surveys last year when we did this, and Suzanne, more often than not, everybody said, we want Suzanne back. And I said, we have to have her back no matter what. She actually does a ton of research. She's phenomenal at what she does, and you'll see some of her data is phenomenal. So let's dive on into it. I don't want to teach people what blogging's about. I think I want to dive into the tips and tactics like we did last time. We want to get some really good nuggets. So at the end of the day, we can go home, put this to use over the weekend, and actually apply it to our companies on Monday through Friday next week. So let's start with Rich. Rich, you've got a TV show, and you do very well with that, but you also have a blog. Actually, you have two different blogs. You've got the KTLA blog, the Tech Reporter, and then you also have richdemuro.com, is that right? Mm-hmm. Okay, let's talk about your personal blog, if you don't mind, for a second, because it's a kind of a startup. What is working on that personal blog these days once you get viewers over to it, either Googling or whatever? What is working when they're on there to either keep them entertained or get them to opt into your newsletter?
Yeah, so what I found with like a broad audience on TV, not everyone tunes into KTLA for tech. You know, I call them drive-by viewers, most of them. So they sit there and they're watching for the news, and next thing you know, they see a cool segment about how to download this neat app for your iPhone, and they're like, oh, that's cool. I wouldn't think local news would have that. And then they go to my Facebook page or my Twitter page, and they sort of follow me there. And they say, well, maybe I'll get more tips from this guy. So the way I see my stuff on TV is very broad. It's very simple. It's like start the basics. What is Wi-Fi? What is it? How does it work? And then when someone gets interested and they come to my personal sites, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, blog, whatever, that's when I sort of take the deep dive with them. And that's when I say like, hey guys, I just got this Amazon Fire TV. Here's the box. Here's pictures of it. Here's me taking the remote out of the box. Here's me unboxing. That's kind of the big thing people do online. Here's me explaining to you in 30 seconds how to forward a text message on the iPhone. Stuff that wouldn't normally work on television, I'll do on the blog. And I treat everything as its own vertical. Twitter is different from Facebook. Facebook is different from the blog. My pictures I post on Flickr are different than the pictures I post on Twitter. So it's funny, it's like how involved do you want to be with me? You know what I mean? And that you can find your little vertical, or if you're I call them the super fans, like I am, for when I really get into someone, I'm a fan on all of their platforms. And so there's obviously people like that for me out there that will look to all these different platforms, and you give them nuggets on different things. And this is something I learned, I don't want to go on forever, but I learned this from someone like, the older people on the last panel were saying, like, learn from people that do this well. And I was sitting there hosting a show with iJustine, and I was sitting there and I'm like, how do you master all of these different channels? Because I was sitting there using like Hootsuite to cross-post everything to Facebook, Twitter, and my goal was to post everything at the same time to every social media platform. And she said, no, you're doing it all wrong. Treat them individually, and then you'll grow those audiences because they're all expecting different things. And I was like, well, that's gonna take so much more work. And guess what? It does take a lot more work. These people were talking about spending 40, 30 minutes on a thumbnail. It's crazy, but guess what? You don't really accomplish stuff when it's easy. And cross-posting is super simple, and sometimes I'm not saying you can never do that, but when I started to individually post, I started to see that magic happen. And that's really what my goals are, is to just have individual platforms for all those things and to treat people like, here, if you're coming to Twitter, you're gonna get the most up-to-date, off the top of my head thoughts that I'll have. You come to Facebook, you're gonna have 1 to 2 posts a day that are kind of interesting.
Very cool. So individual forms of content, if you will, in those areas. Sebastian, what's working with you? Now you're with SBE Hotels specifically, which SLS is a part of that, is that correct?
That's correct.
And what kind of content marketing are you guys doing? And then also what's working?
Sure, so I guess the first thing is, what is a hotel guy doing up here, right? Lifestyle, that's what we do. That's what SBE is all about, is really lifestyle. And what the sort of tip I wanted to bring today was partnerships. We're in the world, the production world, where budgets are slashed constantly. You know, music video budgets are non-existent. TV show budgets are non-existent. So what's the best thing you can do? Partner with companies like us. And that's what we do, is we partner. We partner with a lot of people so we can get really, really good content. One of the most successful things that we did was we did a music video with a band called the Rubens. And the Rubens, they're pretty big in Australia. And the Redbird Hotel has a very big Australian guest customer base. So what we did was we partnered with them, we partnered with Warner Brothers Music, we partnered with Matthew Rolston, who did the design for the Redbird, and they put together this amazing music video. And this kind of answers some of the questions earlier about how do you monetize videos, and how do you monetize videos of e-blasts? Well, what you do is you create the dream, you create the lifestyle that's aligned with your brand, it speaks to your brand, and then you say, guess what? You can do the same thing. Here's what they did when they were on property. Here's a free CD or a single of that music video, and the music video download. You book a room, you stay with us, live like the Rubens, and party like the Rubens. And it works really, really well. And that's really the biggest thing is, the blogs, Twitter, social media platforms are great, great tools. But, find that content that really speaks from your brand's heart, and find like-minded partners that are willing to drive that home. And you will have that's like a formula of success right there in terms of content marketing from our standpoint.
Awesome. Andy, you work at 2 different companies, and this is kind of weird. We actually had to get approval from 2 companies. One of them shot it down. And the other one, you it's okay, I worked there too. It's Disney. It's all right. It doesn't matter. They're in my past too. I was there for many years. And they're a great place to start. You sit here, everybody raise their hand and go, I was in the cubicle there. God bless you, Disney. So we're going to talk mostly today about LA Weekly, if that's okay, but you can bring up Disney too. Blame it on me. Talk to us about LA Weekly, what you're finding it's working in blogging.
So what we do in LA Weekly is a couple different things. One is the LA Weekly brand covers a lot of different subject matter. So we, in terms of what we do with the blogging, we sort of have different verticals. So we have news, we have arts, we have film, we have food, we have music. And the vertical that I work mostly in is music, although sometimes I will branch out and beyond that. And we do that even with our social media channels. I run the Facebook page and the Twitter account for LA Weekly Music, which runs different content than LA Weekly Food or LA Weekly Film. Those channels the audiences are a lot smaller. We do have a sort of master LA Weekly Facebook page that I think has, our LA Weekly Music Facebook page has, 9,000 likes. The main LA Weekly one has 50 or 60,000. But what we find is that those users are much more engaged on the music page because it's more targeted. People go there specifically looking for what are the cool shows coming up this weekend, and so we just find we get better engagement rates and click-through rates by doing it that way. We also, and I do this on my personal blog too, I think what a lot of bloggers and a lot of content companies are kind of falling into the trap of lately is just more and more and more. I sort of feel like there's a really strong impulse to just publish as much content as you possibly can, which is understandable because there's a lot of content out there, and so you sort of feel like you need to be heard above this din. But that can be a little bit of a trap. If you're sacrificing quality for the sake of quantity, you're gonna risk losing readers, most of whom aren't gonna have the time to read all your content anyway. So we only post typically 4 or 5 pieces a day on the West Coast Sound blog, which is low by most people's standards. And we probably could do more, frankly. We probably could get more creative with kind of quick hits and shorter pieces. Our pieces tend to be a little bit longer. They're usually 500 to 1,000 words. They're usually researched and reported out. They're not just sort of, hey, here's the new Beyonce video. There's other sources for that, so we try to provide something that's a little more in depth and has a little more voice to it. And for the most part, we've been pretty successful with that.
So it sounds like what's working is you're feeding a lot of your stuff to social, Facebook specifically,
Yep.
and you're dividing that content down to music and individual tastes that people in LA like. Is that what you're?
Yeah, that's right. And it's still a challenge because even within music, obviously, somebody who is a fan of metal, for example, isn't necessarily going to want to, hear about a hip hop concert. Sometimes hopefully people will, sort of graze and sample a lot of different stuff, but sometimes that is a challenge even within the music channel. Is we are kind of trying to cover a lot of different genres. We're not trying to be all things to all people. I think we definitely bring a certain sensibility to everything that we cover. But we do cast a fairly wide net. That's in contrast to, my personal blog I mentioned earlier. It's called Weirdest Band in the World, and it's specifically about kind of extremely weird, esoteric bands, either that just sort of do crazy gimmicks like wards or wear monster costumes, or that play kind of music that's so out there that 99.9% of listeners would not consider it to be music. So for that, I am really narrow casting. It's a very specific subset. 95% of people in this room, if they go to that blog, will say, I don't get it. And that's fine. That's not my goal. So I'm for that, I can afford to be a little bit more targeted, a little bit more specific. With the weekly, we're still trying to cast a wide net, but kind of one way that we figured out to sort of help us get our content out, especially via social media, is to at least segment it into those sort of topical verticals.
Cool. Suzanne, walk us through what's working with some of your clients on blogging.
Sure. I echo the sentiments of my panelists because they have some great advice that actually works and it's proven. It's not fluff. And I also applaud the ex-Disney people in the house. So, more stories on my end from freelancing there. The thing that works the best is it comes down to basics. Knowing your audience, of course, putting quality first, but really having an interest in who is reading your content, as if you're talking to them face to face. And I'm just seeing all the time a dearth of content in cyberspace that doesn't focus on that whatsoever, that's impersonal. Right now, for Intel, I was developing a content/consumer cycle engagement map, and this thing was blown out. It's every customer, every vertical, all their pain points, all the messaging that applies to them, how products solve those problems, what solutions we have for them, and then if they're top of the funnel / awareness interest or bottom of the funnel, ready to purchase, upsell them after they've made a purchase. So this is a very detailed document, and then you would include a programming grid within that, social times of day to publish, kind of like in TV broadcasting, for example, and radio broadcasting before that. It's not the platform so much as the content. People will find it. It's just some people are huge Mad Men fans and other people think it's boring as hell. So it's just what appeals to what audience. Put something out there that appeals to them and is tailored to them. Working on the homepage of Yahoo, for example, in the entertainment tabs, things were yanked within when I was working there in 2008. Yanked off the homepage if things didn't have a click-through rate of 300 to 500,000 clicks per second. And then your content was thrown up on a large projector screen, and 30 editors lacerated it from different offices. So that was boot camp. So you learn to take priorities from movie studios and from TV studios saying, and from Verizon, let's say, and advertisers, and they'd say, we need this many impressions on this landing page. How are we going to do that? Not by pitching the ideas you've been pitching. We're going to tell you what works, and we're going to tell you how to get it done. And then we introduced blogging because Yahoo was averse to brand journalists, as we now are, actually. And we had to ingratiate ourselves with that and sponsored content. Branded content works as well.
Very cool. Rich, let's bring it back to you. You do a lot of interesting blogging for obviously short form on TV, and then you're taking it more online, or off TV, but online, which is kind of weird there. Talk to us about, you're kind of an entrepreneur, kind of. You're always being kind of scrappy and saying, go over to my website and building, forgive me, but it is kind of true. As a journalist, a lot of people that are on camera are also shining their own shoes, doing all kinds of stuff to hold their little brand and running around. So talk to me about, on richdemuro.com, if you don't mind us focusing on that, because it's kind of interesting. What are you doing with your SEO? Is there anything unique that you're like, Josh, I find the most success with these three things? Is there anything interesting?
Yeah, cross-posting to Facebook. I mean, realistically, it's like, to me, if I do a post, it doesn't really go live until I put it on Facebook, which is really interesting because we were talking about engagement, and the Facebook folks are the most engaged people. I mean, I can put something on Twitter and it'll get, decent amount of clicks, retweets, all that stuff, but it's very fleeting. And when you post something to Facebook, if it comes alive, as I call it, it literally will just blow up the whole day. And it's really interesting, and I think, there's a big debates between Twitter and Facebook and what the pros and cons are of each, but for me personally, I find the most successful is to really make the content on the website and then post it to Facebook in a way that, appeals to the Facebook fans.
Give us an example of appeals. Give us an example of how you would write a message.
Well, it's a different, let's say I did, the Amazon Fire thing. So, I do the Amazon Fire, I do an unboxing, and so I'll post the Amazon Fire unboxing, I'll put, do a whole write-up of basically my first impressions, like getting this thing delivered to my house, open it up, sit there, write a decent blog post about it, what my first impressions are, how this thing works, just spending maybe a half an hour with it. Because people want to see this stuff immediately. When you're a tech fan, you literally want to know the second something's available, how it works, what the unboxing was like, what the features are like, what's cool, what's not cool.
It's like a movie release, kind of. It's like you want to be the first to see it that week.
Yeah, if you're into a movie, absolutely. I mean, you want to be there. And if you're in the market for stuff, if you create tech products, you want to read what everyone has to say about it. You don't want to just read what I have to say. You want to read what I have to say and cross-reference that with what 10 other tech reporters have to say. And then you kind of see who says the same thing and what adds up, what doesn't. So I would write it in a way, on my Facebook page, I really have fun with it because it's, you want to get that engagement, you want to get that interaction with people. And the way I do that is everything is different. Like we're doing a story on Monday where we ordered 3 sets of flowers. It's Mother's Day, and I'm always curious. I always order from 1-800-Flowers.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah, get them in now.
Holy smokes.
And so I'm always curious. Like, I order from 1-800-Flowers. I always ask my mom, how do these flowers look when you get them? What do they look like? And she's like, okay, whatever. She sends me a picture. They never look the same as they do on the website. So I'm like, let me order from 3 different websites, on the company's dime, and see which ones we like the best. And so we brought in the interns, we got them all shipped in, and So anyway, the point is, on TV, you'll see one story. You'll see the story of how we opened them all up, how we ordered them, how much they cost, how we used a coupon code, all this stuff. But on my Facebook page, I'm not going to sit there and do the same story because Facebook is different. So what I did was I took 3 pictures of the flower bouquets that we ordered, and I said, you guys like which one you think looks best. And so even if you did not watch the story on Monday on KTLA when it comes up, it doesn't matter. Because a lot of people post assuming you've seen everything that they've done before. And you can't assume that. There are thousands of people on Facebook that don't watch me every day. They happen to watch once, they happen to like the page, and now I'm stuck on there and I show up in their feed and they're like, how'd you get here? Not a lot of people, but there are those people. And that happens to everyone on Twitter, whatever. I see people on my feed, I'm like, how did I know this person? How did I meet, where did I meet them? So I think that you really have to play, so anyway, have fun with that and just try different things. Today I did a caption contest, which is totally, I mean, people love to have their own say in things. Yesterday I totally did a funny joke with my brother. It was his birthday, and so I did sort of a, if you guys are familiar with Reddit, which I'm sure you are, there's sort of a meme on Reddit where you say something, you're like, this guy only has one friend, so can you make him feel better? And so I did that to my brother. I said, it's his birthday, he only has 3 friends, can you make him feel better? It got, I think last I counted 4,000 comments and like 10,000 likes. So, and my little brother got so many Facebook friend requests. He was like, this explains all these friend requests. So, and my brother's a good looking kid, so he was getting all kinds of, I mean, it was unbelievable for his day. So it was a fun, so my point is, you wouldn't expect that from the tech person at KTLA, but guess what? The people on the page had so much fun with it. And today they had fun with a picture of me standing with like, 4 bikini girls that we happen to have at KTLA today. So you will see a range of different things, and guess what? If you don't want to interact, you don't have to, but people love to have fun, and they love to just play along.
It's a tough job, Rich. All right, let's move on to the next one.
And just to piggyback off of that, I think that's a great way of putting it. Like you don't want to bombard people with like content all the time, your content all the time necessarily. I think it's create, curate, and syndicate. It's like a combination of those 3 things that will really, really drive your brand across, and like making it fun. We do a lot of things like that where we did a Coachella playlist. What's your Coachella playlist? Here's ours. That kind of stuff. And that engages your audience a lot. And they come, they end up going to your clubs, they end up going to your restaurants and hanging out with you.
Where did that live? Was it on your blog?
Yeah, sv.com/blog. And I think right now we used to do one with Q&A with Jamie Foxx and and stuff like that. It's just really fun,
If I can get more tactical and technical, how did you let people stream your music on your playlist on your blog?
We did through SoundCloud.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's a branding decision there. Our nightlife, we have a nightlife division that's very, very forward-thinking. And SoundCloud is kind of like that platform. It's not Pandora where anybody can. It's kind of like saying, here's SoundCloud. We're with the musicians.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
On the musician side.
We're with the DJs.
It's like Vimeo versus YouTube.
Exactly.
When you're with the artist, you're with Vimeo.
Exactly.
It's picturesque.
Yeah. And again, going back to the whole partnership thing, you got to choose your partners right.
Yeah.
You do that well, you just keep driving that home. It's very wise.
So you had a lot of SoundCloud embeds saying, listen to our playlist here.
We did that. Yeah, we had that in the actual blog post, and I believe we're playing with the idea of actually putting it on the news pages on sb.com. We haven't done so already.
That's a good case study. Andy, give us a case study, some kind of good example on LA Weekly of something on blogging that went right or unique fix.
Our most successful blog post ever, and this is not just for LA Weekly, this is for the entire Village Voice Media Group. It's maybe not our most shining moment in journalism, but it worked. It was a list called the 20 Worst Hipster Bands. It came out in October of 2012, and to date it's gotten 6.5 million page views. I think 5 million of those were like in the first 2 months or something like that. So it was wildly successful. And we obviously we did some social media stuff to kind of try to promote it. We would sort of use we would tweet, like not directly at the band, but we would kind of use their Twitter handles to sort of stir the pot a little bit. But I mean, I think the takeaway from it for me is at least when you're, and this is probably not true for brands, but I think when you're a content company, when you're an editorial outlet, don't be afraid to go negative, so long as you're doing it in a way that's authentic and that has a sense of humor about it. We didn't take the list that seriously ourselves, and we sort of played around with this amorphous term hipster that gets overused all the time. We sort of deliberately troll people a little bit, throwing some bands in there like fun. People are like, that's not a hipster band, and we're like, we know, just put it in there to make sure you're paying attention. That's awesome. And it just that it stirs up controversy, it stirs up debate. And that gets results. And another sort of an ancillary to that. I've learned, and I learned this too in my previous, I worked for an entertainment website called Metro Mix. And you read the comments, you get tons of negative comments. A lot of our most popular posts, there will be 115 comments and 113 of them will be negative. Analytics trump feedback. If people are looking at your content, I don't care if they all say it sucks. They're looking at it more than any other piece of content you've ever posted. It's an effective piece of content.
So I keep getting into fights with people on Facebook about how Radiohead is not a hipster band.
And you're right, they're not.
Joy Division is not a hipster band.
There's actually a great story, and sorry not to get off on a tangent, but there was actually a great story in Vice not too long ago about that hipsters are don't exist, that they're a completely manufactured concept in the media, and that there is no such. There's nobody in the world who self-identifies as a hipster. I think that's another story.
I don't know about that. Go to Silver Lake. I don't know. That's not hipster. Everyone's gonna have an opinion. Sometimes they're swankers. That's my term.
That room is a hip, right? That room is so hip that it turns its lights off automatically.
It's emotional.
Yeah.
To be square. What's successful? Well, I can tell you a freaky story. I worked at California Psychics, one of the largest psychic companies in the world, and they have 33 million a month in revenue alone from phone calls, and some of the calls are 10 to 15 bucks a minute, and some are calls from executives who we call the concierge customer, who would call for business advice and ring up the largest bills, 50 grand a year they'd spend on psychic advice. Well, some of them were full of it, some of them were accurate, they validated some of your instincts or emotions, etc., and opened you up to a different way of thinking. So I had a stable of psychics, technology that was outdated, type pad, which nobody uses, no content strategist, no editorial team. Like most of my team was in print, and they were a lot more senior than I was, and they did not want to take this kid seriously. So how did I develop 400,000 referrals for new customers in a week from 2,500? I built up the blog like a bonanza, like a content factory, and I built up the newsletter, I redesigned all the tools from soup to nuts. I hired and fired people, unfortunately, but the biggest winner that raked in the largest amount of sales with this one psychic who's now at 12 bucks a minute, the sex and love columnist. I made the psychics columnists.
Let's keep it light, bread, and polite here for a YouTube video. I don't understand. So you're saying you have a lot of content? How do you get people to watch it?
There was never a editorial content. Now there is, so getting folks to engage with that more, just some good strategies for an audience that wouldn't typically do a lot of social media, wouldn't do a lot of other online stuff besides that particular site.
Sexy pictures of cars.
And girls.
Works every time. Even for me, as the Aston Martin that's brand new, Ford collecting all of the data in their cars right now for driver behavior, the odd air freshener in the Infinity cars, like the wackiest things that you can think of. A portable car battery that I just heard of the other day. I'm working on an auto company right now, and I've worked with Toyota in the past, and anything around innovation, design, and picking up women works at any age. I mean, appeal to the ego and create a grid, create a calendar, and really talk to your audience and ask them for feedback and questions. Post their comments as posts, make polls, quizzes. Men aren't that into the quizzes and polls, but if it's eye-catching, you'll see them.
See why she was people's favorite speaker last time? Any other questions? Yes.
And you mentioned that analytics trump feedback. At what point does negative feedback start to affect your corporate image of your advertising?
That's a really good question.
Let me repeat the question for those viewers out there. At what point does negative feedback start to hinder you?
That's a really good question, and I think it's going to vary depending on the case. I mean, I think at the weekly, I think the line we try to walk is to, we try to engage in, we try to maintain a sense of humor about it. And we try to go about it in a way where we're not taking ourselves too seriously, and it's not feeling like, I mean, even with that 20 worst hipster bands, that you know, the conceit itself is not that serious. It doesn't feel like we're just sort of attacking bands for the sake of attacking them. I mean, we're kind of a unique case because I think, you know, people come to websites like The Weekly expecting opinions. You know, we review restaurants, we review films, we review concerts. You know, if we think something sucks, we're going to say that it sucks, and that is part of our brand. So I think maybe we're, you know, compared to a lot of people in this room, we're maybe a somewhat unique case because of that. But I think where we probably have to sort of draw the line is we have to, you know, be careful, and we are careful, sort of not to go about doing it in a way that seems purely mean-spirited, or that seems like we're sort of, you know, deliberately kind of attacking the sensibilities of our audience. We have to kind of bear in mind as we're doing this stuff that a lot of our audience, they are hipsters, whether they call themselves that or not. You know, and we don't want to go push it too far to where we wind up alienating them. But it's a really good question. I mean, it is a really fine line. We walk it a lot.
Actually, what kind of add to that? So for us, hospitality firm, that's huge, right? And for us, we use tools like reputation management monitoring systems, basically, for platforms. And whenever we get a negative review, that's like we flag it. We have a goal set of like 100%. We have to respond to any 1- or 2-star reviews on TripAdvisor, Yelp, anything like that. That's a must. And there's no way around that. You know, unlike we're not editorial. You know, we have to make sure we uphold that brand of luxury, of service. It's really important to us. But you know, we have to put kind of like that's falls under the sort of the curating thing, right? You got to curate properly. And the analytics, while like, you know, I live and die by analytics every day. And I agree that the longer depends for me too. The longer they are on my site doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing, right? I'm not converting fast enough, maybe. So it all depends on exactly what your brand is, what your product is.
What tools do you use to help you generate content?
Yeah, are there any tools, Sebastien? Let's start with Sebastien.
The best one is your front line. Who is in contact with your guest? Who is in contact with the people who basically pay for your product? Ask them what they want to know. You know, what are they when you get to your lobby, when you get to your front desk? What is the first thing they ask? Where's the closest bar? All right, so it was the first thing they ask. How do I get to Rodeo Drive? Those questions, if you can put them in a data bank, you have an endless source of highly qualified topics that will be picked up across the board anytime, every time.
Yeah, I kind of along those lines, and this applies to anything, but you know, when I interview people, they're always like nervous, you know, and especially when they're an expert in their field, but they get nervous when you put a camera in front of them. And I always say, look, you're the expert. You know all this information. They're always trying to like say it in a certain way, but it's the same thing with content. Like the best content comes from like what you're saying. Like ask your people. Like what are the number one questions we're getting here? What are the number one things people are asking us? What are the things that people are looking for? And realistically, and this goes back to your question about your site and trying to find the content, is you know you've got a whole team of experts, I'm assuming, that are buyers or sellers or you know figuring out how to best place these products. They see what sells the most. You know, work along those lines, like capitalize on the stuff that you see, the trends that you see on your site. You know, if people are interested in rims for their tires, you know, maybe do a whole thing on that. You know, or feature a different tire every week. I think that the people are really the wealth of information that you can tap in your own organization. You know, for me, it's reaching out to viewers. If I ever need stories, it's like, hey, what do you want to know about? What do you want to know how to do? And then we'll do a story on that. If 10 people, you know, say the same thing.
Did you mean tactical software tools as well? Because echoing what Sebastien said, it is the best tool. That's how I became successful at California Psychics, by talking to customer service, what people are calling in about, what topics they want. Aside from that, I would also say a lot of the content curation sites, and then Technorati's blogger list. So following the top influencers in those spaces, and then follow along to follow influencers. Gather content is an editorial/content marketing tool for smaller to mid-sized businesses, and then enterprise-wide go with Compost or Marketo. And then, of course, Google Analytics, Kissmetrics, Alexa. I'm a data junkie, so I mean, data tells more of a story than anything else, and right now it's about customer acquisition. It's not about page views, it's not about eyeballs, it's not about reach, it's about conversions. It's about getting that one person in the door.
So for one second, why don't you talk to us about, for your clients, what that means? What does conversion mean? Is it email opt-in? Is it a purchase? What does that look like?
To every client, it's defined differently.
Yes.
To an auto dealer right now that I'm dealing with in Canada, to them it's signing up for a dealer report. To someone else, it's signing up for a subscriber list for email. To AT&T, when I was there, it was lead generation, just pretty much eyeballs on the page and impressions. I could go through the whole list, but at Yahoo was click-through rates and impressions, because that drove, the homepage drove traffic into the interior properties, and then we had, movie studio priorities and ads from different companies, and we had to report on that. We also had to beat ComScore totals, AOL and MSN every month in every category. And then recently, for some of the smaller businesses and entrepreneurs, downloading a white paper, that's a big deal. And that's what they're considering a conversion in some places. Sometimes people care more about traffic than they do about conversion rates. So educating the customer on why conversion rates less is more, work smart not hard, is a better way to go.
That's really wise. Yeah, let's wrap it up here. Andy, what does a conversion look like? Since we're getting people to your final destination, which I believe there's only two things, and I put it in print on Amazon, there's two things in the world that you own. This is only my theory. Feel free to disagree with me. You own your URL, that is richdemuro.com or MediaLeaders.com. And you also, the second thing that you own in the world is the right to email those that opt in to your newsletter. You do not own your Facebook likes, you don't own your Twitter connections, and all this other stuff is a bunch of buzz. You own those two things. So with that in mind, and that's just my personal opinion, but it seems to work more often than not. With that in mind, what does LE Weekly look for as a conversion? What does success look like for them?
I actually don't work on our newsletter, so I feel like I'm maybe not the best qualified person on this panel to answer that question. So I don't know if anybody else wants to talk about.
Newsletter-wise, what does success look like when you got a lot of eyeballs? Is it more comments? Like you said earlier, analytics is more than.
I mean, for us, it's ultimately it's page views, it's impressions.
Because you have advertisers.
Yeah, I mean online. I mean, obviously we have the print edition as well, so we have our print advertisers to think about. But online, the number one thing that we're looking for is just page views, because those are what drive our online advertising.
Sebastien, talk to us about what success looks like for your hotel.
Dollar values, reservations for the hotels, covers for the restaurants, entry fees for the nightclubs, but also, data. CRM is a huge initiative for us. It's going to be really big. That's how we customize the entire experience across the board. So that's going to be a big metric for us as well.
That's awesome. And Rich, tie this back to KTLA. What does success look like on the KTLA blog or richdemuro.com?
When it's TV, it's, obviously it's ratings, which I find to be really interesting because they're so crazy. But when it comes to me, since I'm much more in the online space as well as in TV, to me it's the interaction online. So if something's really, we do a good story like today, I could tell that we drove a ton of traffic to our website and also Radio Shack's website because we partner with them on a story. And I can just tell, when you see those page views and video views, and just not only that, but the interactions. I got 100 emails, off the story today. You can just tell. The feedback, the beauty about TV today is that, I've been doing reporting for 15 years now, and like the feedback you get that's immediate now is unbelievable. Whereas you could just kind of exist in TV back in the day and never, ever interact with your audience, and you'd be just fine.
Ron Burgundy style.
Yeah, totally. And there are still people that do that. There are still people that I work with that just don't get it. Yeah. And they'll be fine, and they'll have a fine career, but the reality is I'm planning ahead for the next 30 years, and they're not. And to me, it's so much more rewarding to have that relationship with the viewer now, because it's not just seen as an eyeball, it's really seen as where can I take this to the next level? And how can I make it good for them too? That's the reality, is that I actually really enjoy giving people tips and tricks and hints and inside info. Yeah, I love it. It's I have that velvet rope moved away, and I get to bring you along with me. And I just love that idea.
That's great. Well, I want to take a group photo with you guys. Let's give a round of applause.